Welcome to Secret Societies podcast. I'm your host, Ben Carter, and in today's episode, we peer into the shadows of America's elite institutions to expose a secret society whispered about in conspiracy circles and boardrooms alike. Hidden behind ivy-covered walls and cloaked in ritual, this organization has quietly influenced presidents, policy, and global power. They call themselves Skull and Bones, born in secrecy, protected by wealth, and accused of steering the fate of nations. Who are they, and what do they really control? The story of Skull and Bones begins in the year 1832, amid the quiet courtyards of Yale University. America was young, but ambition surged through its veins. The nation was expanding westward, battling internal divisions and forging its identity. Yale, one of the oldest and most prestigious institutions in the country, served as a breeding ground for the next generation of American leaders. But beneath the formal education and classical studies, a different kind of initiation was unfolding, one not found in any syllabus. In this setting, a young man named William Huntington Russell returned from studies in Germany, inspired by the dark allure of European secret societies. Germany had been home to a number of clandestine student organizations steeped in ritual and bound by loyalty. Russell, a man of intellect and discipline, saw the potential for such a structure within the American elite. Upon his return, he joined forces with Alphonso Taft, another ambitious Yale student who would go on to become the U.S. Attorney General and father of future President William Howard Taft. Together, they laid the foundation for what would be called the Order of Skull and Bones. From the start, the society operated under a strict code of secrecy. Only 15 senior students were selected each year, tapped on their shoulders in a shadowy ritual known only to those inside the tomb, an imposing windowless building at 64 High Street that serves as the society's headquarters. Those chosen were not merely popular students, they were student body presidents, editors of the Yale Daily News, star athletes and political legacies, young men poised to climb the ladders of power in law, finance, intelligence, and government. The society adopted symbols that would raise eyebrows in any other context. Its logo, a skull and crossbones above the number 322, has sparked decades of speculation. Some link 322 to the death of Greek orator Demosthenes in 322 BCE, symbolizing the end of democracy in ancient Athens. Others suggest it refers to the German origins of the group, tying it to a chapter of a German secret society. Regardless, the symbolism is unmistakably morbid, and it sets Skull and Bones apart from Yale's other secret societies. What made Skull and Bones different wasn't just its iconography, it was the ambition behind its secrecy. The society's founders didn't want a mere fraternity. They envisioned a pipeline into America's most powerful institutions, one that began with ritualistic bonding in youth and matured into lifelong mutual loyalty. In this world, secrets weren't liabilities, they were currency. The members didn't just swear allegiance to Skull and Bones for their college years, they committed for life. By the late 19th century, Skull and Bones alumni were already infiltrating the upper echelons of American finance, diplomacy, and politics. The society's members went on to found banks, shape foreign policy, and even orchestrate the structure of the CIA. Yet none of this was publicly acknowledged. The tomb remained sealed, its inner workings known only to the initiated. Rituals conducted inside were protected by silence. Not even spouses or family members were told what occurred within those stone walls. At its core, Skull and Bones offered its members something far more powerful than knowledge. It offered access to influence, access to protection, access to each other, and perhaps most importantly, access to a network that extended from the halls of Yale to the centers of global power. While the world saw presidents and CEOs, beneath the surface was a quiet fraternity that had been shaping decisions long before they ever reached the headlines. The veil of secrecy surrounding Skull and Bones remained intact for over a century, but in 1986 a single article disrupted that silence. An investigative journalist named Ron Rosenbaum, a Yale alumnus himself, published an expose in Esquire magazine titled The Last Secrets of Skull and Bones. It was the first time a major publication had dared to shine a light on the inner workings of the order. What Rosenbaum revealed wasn't proof of conspiracy in the traditional sense, but something far more unsettling, a carefully preserved elite pipeline, ritualized with eerie symbolism and protected by generations of loyalty. His descriptions of bizarre initiations, where members reportedly lay in coffins, confess their deepest secrets, or simulate symbolic death and rebirth, caught public attention. Rumors swirled about stolen relics, including the skulls of historical figures like Geronimo and Pancho Villa. The image painted was less of a fraternity and more of a cult grooming its members for domination, not camaraderie. Though many dismissed the piece as sensationalism, it forced open a conversation that had long been whispered but never published. But Rosenbaum wasn't the only one who had pulled at the threads. In 2004, Alexandra Robbins, a Yale graduate and former boneswoman, released Secrets of the Tomb, a detailed investigation into Skull and Bones. She never betrayed the identities of current members or rituals she couldn't confirm, but her reporting drew from interviews with insiders and historic records. According to Robbins, the society wasn't simply an eccentric club, it was a stepping stone to a network of immense political and economic reach. The timing of her book was critical. That same year, America witnessed something unprecedented. The two leading candidates for President of the United States, George W. Bush and John Kerry, were both bonesmen. When asked about the society during a nationally televised interview, both men gave nearly identical answers. "It's so secret, I can't talk about it." The synchronized deflection wasn't lost on the public. For many, it was no longer a theory, it was confirmation. Whatever Skull and Bones was, it was real, and its influence stretched all the way to the White House. Yet, the mainstream media offered little in the way of follow-up. Despite a momentary spike in interest, most outlets treated the society as a quirky footnote rather than a serious subject of investigation. Detractors argued there was no proof of coordinated agendas or illegal activity. But those who had been following the society's reach saw something else entirely, a mechanism of control that didn't require illegality to be effective. Influence, after all, often operates quietly. Even when questions were raised about Skull and Bones' rumoured connection to intelligence agencies, especially the CIA, most were quickly dismissed. However, researchers pointed out that several of the agency's early architects, including James Jesus Angleton and William F. Buckley Jr., had direct or indirect ties to the Bones network. While not definitive, the overlaps were undeniable. And when journalists or whistleblowers tried to push further, they often encountered dead ends, sealed archives, or inexplicable career obstacles. There were also internal disruptions. In the 1990s, a group of Yale students filed a lawsuit against the society for the alleged theft of Geronimo's remains. Though the case was eventually dismissed on procedural grounds, documents presented during the hearings suggested that the society did in fact possess human remains in its tomb. But again, no criminal charges were filed. The matter quietly dissolved, just like the many whispers before it. Each revelation, each leak, each legal challenge seemed to vanish without consequence. It was as if Skull and Bones existed in a dimension just beyond accountability, visible enough to inspire curiosity, but protected enough to resist scrutiny. And in that protected space, the seeds of power were not only planted, but carefully tended. Walk the campus of Yale University and you'll see proud traditions, Gothic architecture, academic regalia, and historic lecture halls. But in the quiet corners, subtle signs point to something else entirely. A strange number carved into the stonework of the tomb, 322, cryptic graffiti that appears and vanishes overnight. Senior students whose names reappear decades later in headlines, government appointments, or international finance deals. While the rituals of Skull and Bones are hidden, their influence seems to manifest in patterns that stretch far beyond New Haven. One of the most telling clues lies in the alumni rolls. Though Yale has produced thousands of graduates, a peculiar number of its most influential sons trace their origins not just to the university, but to the tomb. Former presidents William Howard Taft and George H.W. Bush were both bonesmen. So was Averell Harriman, one of the founding architects of the post-war world order, and Henry Luce, who created Time magazine and shaped the media landscape of the 20th century. The names don't stop there. Supreme Court justices, CIA operatives, senators, Wall Street titans. The Bones network isn't large, but it's deep. Beyond the name, symbols offer their own story. The skull and crossbones emblem, long associated with danger, death, and secrecy, appears in Bones iconography with unapologetic boldness. It's often placed above the mysterious number 322, which remains one of the most contested elements of their identity. Some historians believe it references the year 322 BCE and the death of Demosthenes, marking the fall of Athenian democracy and the rise of oligarchic control. Others speculate that 322 refers to the founding order's ties to Eulogian Club 322, a supposed German secret society that inspired Russell. Regardless, the number has taken on an almost talismanic power, stamped on documents, carved into architecture, and even used in coded communications between members. Inside the tomb itself, according to leaked accounts, the symbolism grows stranger. Bonesmen reportedly participate in rituals involving skulls, robes, and symbolic rebirth. Recruits lie in coffins and deliver confessions, personal secrets meant to forge unbreakable bonds and ensure lifelong allegiance. There are statues of death, macabre decor, and relics that suggest a fascination with mortality and control. One of the most enduring rumors involves the skull of Geronimo, allegedly stolen by Prescott Bush and other members in 1918 and brought back to the tomb. Though the society has never confirmed the story, internal letters uncovered by Yale historians lend troubling credence to the claim. Patterns also emerge in how Skull and Bones members are positioned for success. Through a combination of mutual support, insider introductions, and possibly code recommendation networks, Bonesmen often find themselves fast-tracked into prestigious internships, clerkships, and fellowships. Some researchers point to specific career trajectories that seem too consistent to be random. Bonesmen entering diplomacy, intelligence, and media at rates far above the statistical norm. While this could be dismissed as coincidence, the sheer volume of connections challenges such an easy explanation. Financial footprints also raise eyebrows. Several powerful private banking institutions and investment firms have roots that trace back to Bones-affiliated families. Brown Brothers Harriman, once the largest private bank in the United States, employed numerous Bonesmen, including George Herbert Walker, maternal grandfather of George H.W. Bush. The firm's influence in post-war finance and global development placed Bones alumni in key roles shaping economic policy on an international scale. Through these patterns, symbols, rituals, appointments, and wealth, a quiet architecture begins to emerge. One that isn't declared in public, debated in Congress, or challenged in courts. It is informal yet unshakable. It hides in plain sight. Long before Skull and Bones was conceived, the idea of elite secret orders working behind the scenes was already deeply embedded in human history. From the esoteric societies of ancient Egypt to the clandestine brotherhoods of Renaissance Europe, powerful groups have always used secrecy not only to protect their interests, but to shape the very civilizations in which they operated. As Skull and Bones emerged in the 19th century, it echoed patterns that had been playing out for millennia, carefully preserved structures that repeated across time, hidden behind new names and evolving rituals. The parallels to the Knights Templar are difficult to ignore. Founded in the 12th century, the Templars were a secretive military order tasked with protecting Christian pilgrims in the Holy Land. But beneath their pious mission, the Templars developed into one of the most powerful financial and political forces in medieval Europe. They established a vast network of wealth, property, and influence that eventually provoked the wrath of kings and popes. When the Templars were purged in the early 1300s, much of their knowledge and their fortune was believed to have disappeared into underground networks. Some historians and theorists suggest that their legacy did not die, but simply changed form. In the 17th and 18th centuries, secret orders re-emerged in different guises. The Rosicrucians promoted mysticism and spiritual enlightenment while hiding esoteric knowledge in coded texts. The Freemasons developed intricate initiation rituals and hierarchical structures designed to preserve ancient wisdom and protect powerful members. In each case, these societies cloaked themselves in symbols, secrecy, and selective membership, offering allegiance and advancement to those who passed through their rites. Skull and Bones appears to mirror many of these structures. Its number-limited membership, elaborate initiation and obsession with death and rebirth draw direct lines to older initiatory traditions. The architecture of the tomb, resembling a mausoleum with an Egyptian revival facade, nods to antiquity. Even the symbolic death rituals, where initiates lie in coffins and recount their lives, echo practices from ancient mystery schools in Greece and Rome, rites designed to strip the initiate of ego and reconstruct them as something new, bound to the order. Then there are the similarities in purpose. Just as the Templars leveraged secrecy and loyalty to extend their power across continents, Bonesmen used a hidden network to extend influence across institutions. Like the Freemasons, they offered fraternal bonds, mutual protection and silent advancement through a world of shifting power. The pattern is unmistakable: secret society as mechanism, fraternity as instrument, and ritual as control. What distinguishes Skull and Bones, however, is not just its mimicry of ancient orders, but its fusion of secrecy with institutional legitimacy. While the Templars were eventually hunted and dismantled, and Freemasonry often operated at the margins of public suspicion, Skull and Bones embedded itself within one of the most respected educational institutions in the world. It didn't challenge the system, it became part of it. It blended invisibly into the fabric of American elite formation, presenting itself as tradition while functioning as a selective gateway to power. The repetition of symbols across centuries, the skull, the crossbones, the secret handshakes, the hidden archives, suggests more than coincidence. It hints at a continuity of method, if not of membership. Whether through direct lineage or ideological inheritance, the patterns resurface. Secret societies rise, fall and re-emerge under different banners, always adapting, always concealing their true function behind allegory, ritual and silence. And Skull and Bones, despite its American facade, may be just the latest iteration in a much older and darker lineage. The machinery that shields Skull and Bones from scrutiny isn't limited to the rituals behind its stone walls. Its true resilience lies in how the society has been protected, ignored, or rationalized by the very institutions meant to question power: academia, media, and the structures of public discourse. While whispers have persisted for generations, they often dissolve into smirks and shoulder shrugs when brought into public light. The gatekeepers of truth, those with access to the facts and platforms to expose them, have largely turned away or looked too late. At Yale, where free inquiry and critical thought are celebrated as pillars of education, there is a strange and consistent silence when it comes to Skull and Bones. Professors who challenge its role are rare. Students who aren't chosen learn early that questions are discouraged. Some, when asked directly, respond only with vague amusement or nervous deflection. Even university officials have, on occasion, refused to comment on matters involving the society, citing tradition, privacy, or irrelevance. The few academic works that do mention Skull and Bones often treat it as a harmless tradition, no different than senior societies on other campuses. It's described as ceremonial, quaint, or even endearing. This carefully cultivated perception is critical to its survival. By minimizing its seriousness, by dressing it in the robes of collegiate folklore, the society avoids critical examination. It becomes something to smile about, an oddity from a bygone era, rather than a living power structure shaping real-world events. The media has largely followed suit. When coverage does appear, it is almost always brief and sanitized. George W. Bush's ties to the society were noted in passing during his campaigns, but never thoroughly investigated. When Alexandra Robbins published her well-sourced book on the order, it was reviewed respectfully, then quickly forgotten. Mainstream journalists rarely pursue Bones stories, often citing a lack of evidence or fear of libel. But behind the scenes, reporters have admitted to encountering pressure from editors, advertisers, and even sources when probing too deeply. It's not always direct censorship. Sometimes it's the subtler force of self-preservation. Publishing a hard-hitting investigation into Skull and Bones risks alienating powerful alumni, institutional donors, and political figures. Yale, after all, has produced Supreme Court justices, presidents, and media executives. It is not an institution anyone in public life is eager to antagonize. And when the lines between power, education, and media blur, truth becomes negotiable. Even the digital age hasn't broken the silence. In a time when social media accelerates scandal and fringe theories gain momentum online, Skull and Bones remains curiously resistant to viral exposure. Posts about the society are often buried in algorithms, overshadowed by louder, more dramatic controversies. Videos or articles that do gain traction often blend fact with fiction, making them easy targets for debunking or ridicule. Conspiracy forums, meanwhile, lump the society in with alien encounters and reptilian overlords, effectively discrediting genuine inquiry by drowning it in absurdity. What emerges is a closed circuit of protection. Academia provides legitimacy, media downplays the threat, public discourse mocks the very idea of a secret society controlling anything. And all the while the pipeline continues, new members tapped each spring, their names withheld from public records, their connections activated silently in the corridors of finance, diplomacy, and intelligence. It's not that people don't know, it's that they're conditioned not to care. By the time the public begins to notice, the damage is already done. The appointments are made, the deals are signed, the secrets are kept. In the space where official records end and speculation begins, a web of controversial theories has flourished, many dismissed by skeptics, but none easily disproven. Skull and Bones, with its wall of secrecy and legacy of influence, has become a lightning rod for deeper, darker suspicions. Whether these theories stem from paranoia or proximity to truth remains unresolved, but they persist because the available facts leave too many questions unanswered. One of the most persistent claims is that Skull and Bones functions not merely as a fraternal network, but as a feeder into global governance, an unseen layer of coordination between elite players in politics, finance, and intelligence. This theory hinges on observable trajectories, Bonesmen appearing not only in positions of domestic authority, but also in roles tied to international institutions, such as the World Bank, the United Nations, and NATO. The idea isn't that all Bonesmen act in concert, but that key figures operate with a shared set of values, cultivated from the same obscure rituals and philosophical frameworks. There are also persistent allegations that the Society's inner ceremonies draw from occult traditions, rituals believed to open psychic or metaphysical gateways rooted in ancient Babylonian or Egyptian symbology. These claims, while dramatic, point to Skull and Bones' fixation with death and rebirth. Accounts from former members and researchers suggest the use of human bones, symbols of mortality, and elaborate reenactments that mimic funerary rites. The purpose, some say, is to strip the ego and reconstruct the initiate's identity under the will of the Order, effectively reprogramming future leaders to act in loyalty to the Society above all else. Tied to this is the theory of ancient bloodlines, an idea that connects Skull and Bones to an even older lineage of control. Proponents argue that the Society does not merely choose the most talented students, but selects from families with specific genealogical histories. A disproportionate number of Bonesmen are descended from established American dynasties: Bush, Taft, Harriman, Whitney. The theory posits that these families are part of an unbroken line of influence dating back to European aristocracy, or even further to priest-kings of ancient civilizations. The goal, it's said, is not just to maintain power, but to preserve a hidden legacy, one that has shaped the evolution of nations. Then there's the theory that Skull and Bones is involved in transhumanist experimentation, the belief that the next frontier of elite dominance is the alteration of human biology. According to this idea, members of such societies have long had access to classified research into life extension, artificial intelligence, and even consciousness transfer. The tomb, in this view, is not merely a symbolic space, but a vault of forbidden knowledge, an ark safeguarding technologies the world isn't ready for. Most controversial of all is the claim that Skull and Bones, and societies like it, serve as intermediaries between human governments and non-human intelligences. This theory, long considered fringe, has been reinvigorated by recent disclosures about unidentified aerial phenomena and secret Pentagon programs. Some suggest that the rituals and oaths of these societies are not purely symbolic, but are part of a long-standing exchange of information with entities beyond conventional understanding. In this framework, bonesmen are not just political operatives. They are stewards of knowledge that predates the modern era and may reach beyond Earth itself. These theories are easy to dismiss. They lack definitive proof, rely on anonymous sources, and often blur the line between research and speculation. Yet they endure because the society remains impenetrable. Without transparency, the void is filled by imagination, and in some cases by revelations that turn out later to be alarmingly close to the truth. When secrets are protected for generations, they don't just raise questions, they create myths that may one day become facts. Throughout history, moments of upheaval often bear the fingerprints of hidden hands. Wars erupt, leaders fall, ideologies surge and vanish, all seemingly spontaneous, yet sometimes curiously aligned with the interests of the same small group of people. In examining the legacy of Skull and Bones, researchers have long asked a troubling question. Have these events been orchestrated in part by those groomed behind the tomb's locked door? In 1913, the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law, forever altering the American financial system. Among its architects were men with connections to Yale, and more controversially, to Skull and Bones. The creation of a central banking authority, unaccountable to direct democratic oversight, became one of the most significant shifts in American sovereignty. While public attention was focused on technical economic arguments, few questioned how the architects of the new system had come to wield such concentrated power. Bones-affiliated figures like Prescott Bush and the Harriman family would later emerge as key players in banking and international finance throughout the 20th century. The Society's influence also appears in the shadows of America's wartime decisions. During World War II, Skull and Bones alumni held pivotal positions in the Office of Strategic Services, the predecessor to the CIA. William Wild Bill Donovan, a founding figure of the American intelligence community, was not a bonesman himself, but many of those he recruited were. James Jesus Angleton, the CIA's first head of counterintelligence, was connected to the Yale network and moved in circles that overlapped significantly with Bones alumni. The post-war intelligence apparatus that emerged in the 1940s was shaped not only by national security concerns, but by old friendships, secret loyalties, and a shared worldview cultivated in the cloistered environment of Skull and Bones. Even assassinations and revolutions are not beyond suspicion. When John F. Kennedy was killed in 1963, some conspiracy theorists pointed to his strained relationship with the CIA and his alleged resistance to secret networks. The agency's inner circle at the time included figures with ties to Skull and Bones. While definitive evidence of involvement has never surfaced, the convergence of interests, silence, and selective memory continues to raise questions. On the cultural front, Bones' influence has been felt in subtler yet equally transformative ways. The media empires of Henry Luce, founder of Time, Life, and Fortune, helped define American perception during the Cold War. Luce was a bonesman. His publications shaped narratives around communism, capitalism, and American exceptionalism for decades. The framing of public discourse, especially in times of crisis, was not neutral. It was crafted by men trained in how to shape the world from behind the scenes. There have also been mysterious disappearances and quiet suppressions. Researchers who get too close have reported lost files, sudden career collapses, and inexplicable silence from sources once eager to speak. In 2009, author Anthony Sutton's work resurfaced, highlighting Skull and Bones' alleged role in financing both sides of global conflicts. Sutton, once a fellow at the Hoover Institution, found himself professionally marginalized after publishing his findings. His books were ignored by academia and quietly removed from many libraries. This erasure is not always dramatic. Sometimes it's simply the absence of curiosity. Libraries don't burn, they deacquisition. Journalists don't disappear, they change beats. Documents aren't shredded, they're never filed in the first place. The machinery of history moves forward, but the tracks behind it are covered in dust, obscured by time and deliberate omission. Through it all, Skull and Bones remains untouched. Its tomb stands intact, its records remain sealed, and its legacy continues, not just in the lives of its members, but in the silence that follows wherever its name is spoken. If even a fraction of what's been alleged about Skull and Bones is true, the implications are staggering. It would mean that the architecture of global influence is not entirely democratic, not fully transparent, and not accountable to the public it claims to serve. That behind elections, treaties, wars, and financial collapses lies a network of men bound not by ideology or nation, but by ritual, secrecy, and loyalty to an invisible order. Imagine a world where the outcomes of presidential races, judicial appointments, or even geopolitical conflicts are not solely the result of public will or random chance, but the quiet steering of individuals connected since youth, shaped within the same tomb, and pledged to the same secret society. These are not hypotheticals for conspiracy theorists to debate in obscurity. These are real men with names, offices, and titles whose lives intersect at one deeply hidden nexus. The idea of a society that selects its members in college, then elevates them through government, media, finance, and intelligence, suggests a continuity of purpose that spans generations. It implies that decisions affecting millions may be influenced not in parliaments or courtrooms, but over private calls, unrecorded meetings, or inside clubs whose existence is denied in polite conversation. The power to shape perception, to manage crises, to suppress stories and elevate others, all of it becomes a toolset in the hands of a select few. What does this mean for democracy? For transparency? For justice? If certain individuals are quietly groomed, protected, and propelled into positions of consequence, it challenges the notion that merit or public mandate alone guides the machinery of modern states. It suggests a deeper layer, one immune to elections, revolutions, or reforms. A layer that doesn't appear on ballots, yet influences who gets to write the laws, enforce them, and report on their impact. Religion, too, falls under this shadow. If bonesmen are engaging in rituals tied to ancient death cults, occult symbolism, or Gnostic philosophies, it calls into question the spiritual allegiances of those who claim public faith. If their loyalty lies first with a secret order, what happens when public duty conflicts with private oath? The mingling of sacred and secret undermines the integrity of both. For those who believe in divine accountability, the thought of powerful men pledging fealty in candlelit tombs raises spiritual alarms as much as political ones. Science and knowledge are not untouched. If the society has access to suppressed research, whether in psychological manipulation, surveillance, or bioengineering, it means technological advantage could be hoarded by those with no mandate to use it responsibly. Progress in such a context isn't shared, it's weaponized. The idea of breakthroughs being withheld, not because of safety but control, is not science fiction. It's a natural outcome when secrecy replaces peer review and allegiance replaces transparency. Even history itself may be a construct. If the winners write history, and those winners were chosen in a tomb before they ever entered public life, then what truths have been erased? What falsehoods have been canonized? How many revolutions were permitted only because they served a larger plan? How many assassinations were written off as coincidence when they were anything but? These questions don't require definitive answers to matter. The possibility alone reshapes the way we see the world. It compels us to wonder if we are living within a system shaped not by accidents or ideals, but by design, carefully constructed, quietly managed, and ruthlessly preserved by those who were never elected, never questioned, and never meant to be known. The image of Skull and Bones endures not because of what is proven, but because of what remains unanswered. Its tomb stands unmarked and unyielding, a monument to silence. Its members rarely speak, and when they do, it is with rehearsed dismissal or cryptic restraint. Its records remain sealed. The truth, if it exists in its entirety, lies somewhere behind generations of closed doors, coded language, and ritual oaths. And that silence, more than any accusation, fuels the suspicion that something profoundly significant lies beneath the surface. Perhaps the most disturbing realization is not that Skull and Bones may secretly influence world events, but that such a mechanism could exist at all. A system in which power is not earned or debated, but passed along in whispered rites, curated from youth and maintained with unwavering loyalty. A system that offers privilege not in exchange for service, but for silence. If this is the model behind our leaders, one of hidden allegiance and selective elevation, then the foundational ideals of transparency and meritocracy are illusions, carefully constructed facades masking a deeper architecture. The world's most critical decisions, wars, economic collapses, legislative shifts, cultural movements, may not be spontaneous reactions to world events, but carefully calibrated maneuvers shaped by invisible alliances. The narrative of history itself could be a managed process, the outcomes of which have less to do with public voice and more to do with who was chosen, long ago, in a candlelit room by 15 young men sworn to secrecy. When power becomes inherited through secrecy rather than earned through accountability, history ceases to be a collective journey and becomes a script written in advance. And yet, the truth remains elusive. Each new revelation, each name tied to the society, each ritual detail that leaks into the public eye only adds another layer to the mystery. Skeptics continue to ask for concrete proof, but how do you prove the existence of a shadow without light? How do you trace the hand of influence that leaves no fingerprints? The genius of Skull and Bones may lie in its ability to hide in plain sight, shielded by tradition, legitimized by institutions, and protected by the very forces meant to expose it. In the end, perhaps the question is not whether Skull and Bones controls the world. Perhaps the question is, what kind of world allows such a society to flourish unchallenged? A world that mocks the curious, rewards the silent, and forgets too quickly the connections between privilege and power. A world where questions are treated as threats and secrets as sacred. A world shaped not by democracy or destiny, but by those who have mastered the art of remaining unseen. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Secret Society's podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to Secret Society's podcast on Spotify. Subscribe now.